morning and welcome to another edition of the Economy and Politics Show, where we bring you developments around the economic space and how it affects the populace. We're in the second half of the year 2021. We want to see what's going to be happening, shaping Nigeria's economy. So we're discussing policy, growth, and economic development. With me to have this conversation is Mr. Fasua, an economist, one who has continued to be involved in contributing and shaping our economic discourse and policy strategy. Nice to have you on the show, and very great to have you, Mr. Tope.
Yeah, thank you very much also. Good morning. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Good morning. Let's first begin with the assessment of the Economic Sustainability Plan. We're in the second half of the year 2021, and the intention was to stabilize the economy, address the challenges of unemployment and poverty through several sectors like construction, like renewable energy, and also looking at various incentives for the information communication technology sector, amongst others. Has this ESP been able to stabilize the economy and provide a sustainability approach to the challenges that we're facing?
It's doubtful. It's doubtful because when I looked at the ESP, in quite a number of some very ambitious projects that they said they wanted to do to stabilize the economy, we can't actually feel it on ground, including the 1,000 local government public works program is part of that ESP. I'm not sure where you are. Where I am, I haven't actually seen any such thing on ground to the extent that it makes a salutary impact. As a fact, you know that now we're even talking of very negative developments around the country, more stuff about secession and all of that. Perhaps if these things had been on ground and if it was actually very much working, the youth would be otherwise busy than to, get engaged in some of the things that we're seeing. For example, there's this bit about 5 million solar systems to be installed in different houses. Very ambitious program. Those are the kind of revolutionary programs that when you see them on ground, where even by the time they start rolling out the program, you will know there's something going on in the country. And before you know it, people will tell you that, hey, they were in my house, they did this, they did that for me, and so on. So there's also the bit about 20,000 hectares of land to be cleared for agric, which is what they call the MAP, so something on agricultural program.
Yes.
Well, we haven't heard anything, So, but equally, there's the fact that they wanted to go back to Executive Order 5 in terms of local content, to promote a lot of local content and so on. So it was probably a good plan, a good emergency plan on ground, saying all the right things. But of course, we know that oftentimes the problem we have in Nigeria is not about planning, but about implementation, the resources for implementation. When the tire hits the tarmac, what exactly gets done and what doesn't get done. So to a large extent, I think the plan was good on paper, but the implementation, we haven't started to see it. In fact, I must tell you that this kind of plan is the kind of plan that, should go beyond emergency. It's the kind of plan that I believe should be rolled out for the next 5 years or 10 years. For example, look at that solar panel bit, I mean, that's going to alter the power landscape in this country. When they mentioned it that time, I was very elated. I said, wow, I'm going to be happy to see this done, However, I've not even heard that one house of a common man has been fitted with that solar panel. Maybe, I don't know, but we're talking about 5 million. We haven't had updates. So perhaps I'll end by saying this section that we haven't heard any report card being read out regarding to the ESP. That's perhaps where it is. So government should also know that when they make plans, they have to update the people. In fact, it's something that this kind of plan, you need to update people month by month and say, hey, remember the plan we made after 5 million solar panels. Now We have installed 200,000. We're moving to 500,000 next month, and so on. Then, of course, people will take you more serious eventually.
Yeah, I think that last part is very instructive. The report card for the ESP being very critical. This part of the things we discussed with policymakers when we had the opportunity at the FCT, particularly around the ERGP, that we need to see reports, particularly what's been the impact of the ERGP, which of course was supposed to elapse by last year. And we still also need to see the impact of that plan. So definitely a report card to assess so far the impact is very critical at this point. Well taken note of. Now let's look at productivity. I know that you've also been advocate for this. When we're not productive economies are economies that are able to create jobs, lift millions from poverty, and even issues of foreign exchange doesn't become a challenge, because when you are producing, definitely you earn more foreign exchange. I'd also like to ask you, looking at Nigeria in this period, are we taking the right path of driving a productive economy? We had several political parties. You contested for presidency, coming out with promises, but are we taking that pathway to becoming a productive economy? Considering the fact that now we're in the dispensation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will talk about economies that are competitive, that are productive, being seen as competitive economies.
So now there are so many ways of looking at productivity. The easy way out would be to just call it, look at gross domestic productivity, GDP, and then begin to look at per capita productivity. But then, GDP talks about income, really. Talks about income as much as it's also used to substitute productivity. But it's a pretty loose terminology and inaccurate, if you ask me, in measuring productivity. So, but there's also a way of looking at productivity in terms of what we are creating as a country. So if you're asking about how do we increase productivity, if you're looking from the GDP perspective, you're probably looking at, okay, we want to just be able to increase activity such that, the GDP rises for a given year. In which case, it doesn't matter if maybe crude oil suddenly begins to sell at $150. Right now, we're lucky it's up to $70 right now.
Yeah.
And of course, if it does that, then, the oil sector is going to be contributing a lot more velocity to the economy, a lot more cash flow, which it also takes out. Okay, so in which case we're going to be, selling so much crude, but importing refined oil, refined petroleum, and so on, and that knocks off the entire thing. Inflation will rise in the country. Workers will demand for higher salaries, and you say the GDP has risen. Or you can also look at it and say, the one that I prefer, that the economic complexity of a country increases by being able to produce goods that are more sophisticated, that can command more value in the international market, so that at least we would also know that we're getting a lot more dollars in, apart from what we get from selling crude oil, which we also kind of net off by importing petroleum products. So if you look at Nigeria's top 10 importation, actually, you will see that technology is our biggest import, followed by, by this petroleum, followed by pharmaceuticals, and so on and so forth. So you can see clearly that where our money is going. And in fact, if you look at Nigeria's import structure versus the export structure, you'll see that apart from crude oil that we export so much, the next thing we export, when we begin to talk about cocoa, you're talking about maybe getting about $300 million a year, when our first 10 imports are in the billions and billions and billions of dollars. So technology, for example, we're talking on Zoom now. I'm on my laptop. You're probably on your laptop. Yeah. You're in your recording studio. Everything around you is technology. Some of them we take for granted. It's not just software that we're talking about. We subscribe to all this software. You have to pay. You have to be on, if you like, Zoom Professional. You pay dollars to those companies All the world over, billions of people subscribe to this thing. All of us are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on WhatsApp, we're on all sorts of things, and we pay subscriptions, okay? And those monies, even if you're paid in Naira, it gets converted to dollar, before it gets sent out. Whether your bank or their agent, whoever you pay to, they have to convert to dollar and then send the money out. So technology is our biggest issue. So how do we, there's quite a few ways of increasing productivity in a country. Either you want to promote competition so that companies become more efficient, or or you want to promote competition among the youth and challenge them to improve on the things that the people need. I'm an advocate of that. I believe quite strongly that is not everything that we need to import. I'm not liberal in that respect. I have a soft side for the restriction on Forex for 43 items. And the other day I went and checked and I saw things like candle and incense and eggs and, milk. Of course, we have rice, we have sugar, we have wheat. All of those stuff, they are things that we should actually challenge ourselves to produce. Otherwise, we would go down the liberal route and we forget where we're from until real disaster will hit us between the eyes. Okay, so that's another way to say that they're trying to increase productivity, to get people to actually sit down and see what they can produce, ourselves. Of course, the best economies in the world are economies that have achieved a certain level of self-sufficiency. That is diversification. Diversification, I've actually looked at the long and short, means your ability to be able to self-sufficiently produce the things that your people need. That's a diversified economy. A diversification is not about moving from crude oil to something else. No, not necessarily. It's about that crude oil, being able to refine it locally on your own, getting other industries to work, fulfilling the needs of your people. You cannot be diversified when 99% of what your people need, they have to import, and then you're looking at what you too can export. No, you can't operate an economy such as that they're so externalized. You're always thinking about, what you can send out when you're not even thinking about what to produce for your people that are within. Another way of increasing productivity may be, one of the things that I've been advocating for a while now, a focus on production of what they call public goods and social goods. For example, now most businesses cannot do so well in Nigeria because we have a security problem. Okay, I mean, in the last few days, is the southeast that had shut down. Of course, what that means is that those businesses for those days couldn't operate. And many of them are operating right now, but they are still edgy because anything can happen, and we're hearing all sorts of things happening in the southeast, not to talk of what's going on in the south, in the northwest of Nigeria, the northeast. So now imagine what could have happened if there was no security problem. If everybody could spend their holidays in Nigeria like we used to in the olden days, in the 50s, 60s, families would take trips around the country in the 70s. There wasn't a problem even in the 80s. You could drive around and go to Maiduguri and say, this is where you're going to spend the next 15. That means that you're keeping the money within the economy. But of course, we now got to a point where everybody is externalized. If we want to go to Saudi Arabia or Dubai or London, we started to boast about how much we knew Europe and America and Australia and so on, So you can see where the problem is something as basic as security. Now, so if we invested more, and it's a lot of investment, invested more in security, and one of the best ways to invest in security is to employ people to man positions apart from the use of technology. In a country such as ours, where we have a surfeit of youthful energy, there is an investment to be able to put 50,000 in the pockets of so many of our young people and say, listen, you are working with the security service of Nigeria, you are responsible for the security of your area. All of those places have been, where I see people being dislodged, in Kaduna, in Katsina, in Sokoto, in all those places, is the people, the young people of those places that need to be employed as into the security services to provide security for their people because they have allegiance to their land. Okay, so now, however, the problem is that our leaders, of course, we know that the money could never be enough, but you see the excesses. So there's a chicken and egg scenario. When you have, you'd rather have yourself ensconced in the middle of, a very long convoy of exotic cars that are bulletproof. You're protecting yourself. Yeah. So the 5 billion you should have spent protecting your people, you have used it to protect only you. Then you say, oh, sorry, there's no money to pay. So it's an investment. And we're not talking of only security. So if security was there, businesses will thrive. Yeah. Businesses will thrive and be sustainable. And the money will be kept within the country. But also areas like environment, areas like education, okay? We need a lot more teachers. We have 15 million children on the roads, in the streets in this country. On my way to work in Abuja this morning, I saw 3 of them in Abuja. And I was wondering, my children are in school. Why are these children, who could be between ages of 9 to about 5, why are they not in school? Who is taking them out of the streets? Where is government? And this is Abuja. All right, it's supposed to be a posh city, not to talk of elsewhere. And not only in the north of Nigeria, there's also the same problem brewing in the south of Nigeria today, especially the southwest. Okay, so you need a whole new social services sector to take care of that problem. The United States has 680,000 social workers. And each of those social workers, they give them 7 or 8 children to take care of. And they say, listen, these 7 children who are most likely embedded in different homes as foster children, when you wake up every morning, you take their file, you go and meet them, you knock on the door of the houses they're staying, say, you want to see this person, where is this person, how are they doing, hope they're being well treated, that they've been well fed. That is how countries invest in human capital. But here, when you leave 15 million children on the streets, you cannot get sustainable productivity anywhere. There's nothing you can do. All right. So the best investment we could have done is in that area. So I believe that we have not laid the foundation for sustainable productivity in this country. We haven't laid a good foundation for the future of this country. Hence the problems we are seeing already, which will likely escalate if something is not done.
Okay, so we need to lay that foundation for a sustainable and productive economy, like you rightly said. I like the fact that we need to invest more in security, and particularly they need to produce public goods. A lot has to be done there. And in achieving this, there has to be an alignment between fiscal and monetary policies. If you notice, the MPCs throughout this year have emphasized that to achieve a productive economy that, like you rightly said, reduces an externalized economic situation where we're so external. And I'd just like you to speak in terms of that commitment, that will to see more synergy between the fiscal and monetary policy to achieve what you just said about a productive economy.
Right. So the thing about the alignment between fiscal and monetary policy is very interesting. The big question is, should they move in tandem or should they move in opposite directions? All right. So, of course, of late, the central bank has been accused of delving into fiscal issues and, moving ultra vires. Yeah. Well, I'm a bit ambivalent on that because I believe that, that the central bank shouldn't just keep going on and on about monetary policy and inflation targeting and so on. As a matter of fact, I believe that the position where our economy is right now, we are still a toddler economy. We should be looking at faster growth, okay? Not just, which will, culminate into development eventually, but a much faster growth is what we should be looking at. And if we are looking at that, because the toddler grows much faster than an adult, and America is an adult economy. Europe is an adult. They've been around for a while. 300, 400, 500 years, some of these economies have been around. Some of these countries have been around. We have been around for about 61 years, as independent entity. So we should be moving in leaps and bounds. Unfortunately, it pains me. The projection, IMF projection for Nigeria's growth this year is about 2.5%. And the same IMF and World Bank, they're projecting 6.5% for developed economies. Now, why would developed economies grow faster than underdeveloped economies? I mean, we're talking about, a child that's scoring 20% in the exams in school why is he not thinking about scoring 40%, which would be 100% growth? Meanwhile, those who are scoring 95% are aiming for 99%. When we are saying, oh, they say, oh, sorry, you will not score more than 22%, come next time. That means there's a retardation that's systemic, that's almost generational, a civilizational problem which is being foisted on us. And sometimes when they speak like that, I want to wonder if we're under some sort of hypnotism, and why those who are driving our economies cannot think outside the box and challenge themselves and say, okay, you know what, IMF, World Bank, you think we can grow at 2%, but we're going to show you that we can grow at 8%, at 10%, at 12%. And in the way you're going to be able to grow by that is by actually being thinking radically different from, what they think you can do. And there's so many ways. One of the things is this: you don't only look at the fact that, oh, we don't have money to grow. We want to buy equipment. There's no money for equipment. So the point is, look, what have you done enough with the resources you have? For example, we have students in universities. How are we challenging them to create implements and equipment? How many experiments are they performing? How are they being incentivized to perform those experiments that will change the lives of people, of Nigerians? All right. How are we substituting so we need capital to get things done, but we have labor. We seem to have labor. We have this youth. So how are we using the youth that we have to replace the capital that we would need? But every time we say, oh, we want to borrow money from this one, borrow money from that, and we kind of just financialize the entire problem, reducing everything to a money issue. And oftentimes this is because many people are thinking of how much they can get from those monies when the monies come in, full stop. And they've been going on with this kind of policy for too long. So back to the issue of monetary versus fiscal policy. Should they move in tandem? What kind of monetary policy are we playing now? Kind of, well, if you like, a bit expansionary. In a way, the central bank is trying to get the banks to lend more. They crashed that treasury bills rate the other time, though I heard it's ticking up back again. But we're trying to expand the economy. They wanted the banks to be able to lend money to customers. That's expansionary in nature. To that extent, they sterilize some of the amounts still. The liquidity ratio is still rather high. The cash reserve ratio is still rather high. Banks are complaining, okay? But there's also a policy that came out where the central bank tried to force the hands of the banks to lend about 60% of their portfolio. So that's that. The play on foreign exchange, which is also part of monetary policy. Some will say, I've read elsewhere where it said that devaluation is used to drive productivity by making people focus within. However, I think our devaluation has been toxic for too long. Since we started devaluing, all the promises that we've been given, none of them have materialized. In fact, when we started devaluing in 1985, I remember then, all the promises about once we devalue, our exports would be more attractive, never materialized. As a matter of fact, many people went into export of wood in those days, of cocoa, of all sorts of things, only for them to be shortchanged when their goods get abroad. You hear about all sorts of things like phytosanitary conditions, and then they get so little from what they've sent out of the country. So they got a lot of shock to the system. All right. Then I realized that devaluation itself, the more we devalued the Nigerian currency, the naira, the more we seem to be devaluing the human beings in Nigeria, because we hadn't created the basics. We didn't have the social goods. We didn't have the public goods. We hadn't mastered the production and provision and distribution of these social goods and public goods that will make our people be able to live somewhere like human beings. We look at the kind of houses, 70% of Nigerians crawl out of slums every day. The United Nations rapporteur on housing was here in 2019. She wrote a report that this was the worst conditions he had seen in the world, according to the United Nations. And our people are still living in those conditions as we speak. There's no prototype for the smallest unit of house that the poorest Nigerian can live. We leave them to their devices. Okay, we have, of course, no provision, adequate provision for security. The few policemen we have been, managed by those who have money and those who are in government and those who can pay to become private security service providers. So the point now is that the more we devalue, the more we were devaluing the lives of our people. So those who could afford milk before, all of a sudden could no longer afford milk. Those who could afford little things before, if you could afford a car, you no longer could afford a car because it suddenly just jumped out of your realm. All right, and on and on. And so that's, we kept on deepening poverty with the devaluation policy. Equally, the interest rate policy hasn't been very easy. Of course, as I'm speaking to you, banks are still lending in the region of 25%. Okay, and even some of the intervention funds of the central banks, what I've heard, through some of their agency, that you don't get the money except you pay a premium, which so you may be looking at 8% or 9% on the surface, but by the time you're paying the premium, it goes up to about 20% or more, So all of that is there. So what is our fiscal policy, you then ask? Our fiscal policy, of course, you could probably say it's expansionary because we've been having some intervention there and there, especially as precipitated by COVID. Okay, on a good day, what should it be? Can we have an expansionary monetary policy that drops interest rates and once allows people to be able to borrow money and all of that, and then at the same time you have an expansionary fiscal policy? Can they be expanding together? Or maybe when one is expanding, the other is trying to slow down the economy. Okay, so sort of balance. Are they seeing each other? Are they talking to each other? Or like most things that happen in Nigeria, there's a silo mentality where everybody is protecting their territories. I say, listen, it's not your business what I do. You do yours, I'll do mine. So there needs to be a strategy. There'll be times when you need fiscal policy to be contractionary, in which case you're increasing taxation and reducing government expenditure on infrastructure. Okay, and if that's going on, you're increasing taxation, but you can decide that, okay, you want to drop interest rates in order for people to still be able to get into business. So it's an intricate balance that you have to achieve at every point in time.
I like that last part where you said there needs to be a strategy where if fiscal policy is taking a contraction in terms of increasing tax and also increasing expenditure in infrastructure and other key areas, the monetary policy can say, okay, we drop interest rate. So at least there's that symphony, not the silo mentality like you said. In the next 1 minute, just to wrap up, we have hard choices ahead. The government, policymakers have hard choices ahead, and it's going to really impact the nation. Subsidy removal is being discussed over time on petroleum motor spirit products, PMS, and the adjustment of the electricity tariff to market-based level. Is this something that is affordable at this time? And what would be the implications? Just in minutes, if you can, as we wrap up this conversation.
Well, subsidy, there are many subsidies around. There's subsidy on petroleum, which is always very contentious. And perhaps the biggest number for about 3 or 4 times now, the government has told us that they are deregulating that sector, only for them to come around later and say, oh, we're paying too much subsidy. So it seems like we can't extricate ourselves from petroleum product subsidy. And I personally believe that we shouldn't be paying subsidies on petroleum. Okay, that's the truth. A liter of fuel in the pumps now is about 160 naira. But if you buy 4 liters of palm oil on the road, it's about 2,000 naira at least. So that means 1 liter of palm oil is 500 naira. I believe that more families are using palm oil in their cooking every day than are using the cars and driving around. So why are we not subsidizing palm oil if we must subsidize? I mean, what's different between palm oil and petroleum, for example. So now, but that's beside the point. I wish you would actually get our act right. They would be able to divide, deregulate rather, petroleum. Would be that the price of petrol in Agege will be different from the price of petrol in VI. Okay, and you buy where it works for you. Okay, and so on. But this idea of equalizing the price around the country, I mean, that means that government doesn't want to get out of it. So, but the energy is a little bit more intricate. The sector has been privatized. We have discos and gencos, but the business model that have been brought on board probably has no provision per se for the poorest of the poor. And so I see a scenario where the rich areas seem to be the ones that get the little energy that has been produced these days. So of course they're complaining about marking to market and tariffs that actually cover their costs and so on. Yeah, I believe that we should continue to dialogue with them. But the big issue is this: that electricity generation is no longer the big deal that it was 50 years ago. Okay, when you look at these 5 million solar things that we're talking about 15 years ago, I remember writing severally when in the Obasanjo days, begging government that all of these new estates that they're developing and all of that, all of these luxury estates should come with a prototype for solar panels on top of them as before approval. You want to sell an estate, you have PDs in an estate, you're selling for 50 million per house, as at that time 100 million, and then you're plugging to NEPA. That the population expanded, housing stock expanded, and eventually everybody went on that NEPA load and dragged everything down. So that's not the way it's supposed to be. So if we had these 5 million solar panels already rolling, it redefines the space. What we need to do is to redefine that space so that we will not have an issue with gencos and discos asking for some certain tariffs from those that can pay. I know quite a number of people who have actually taken themselves off the grid entirely. And that's it. We need more people to take themselves off those grids. We need embedded energies to say, okay, I want to supply only VGC. And you know that the people in VGC would pay you what you want. And that's it. We need more of those things to happen. And I've said it, the rural areas, I would rather, if I had my way, if I was a leader in this country, I'll be asking universities and polytechnics, departments of electrical engineering and co to take charge of, electrifying some of the villages in their area so that those villages get off the national grid so that the government can take care of the rest. We have to be able to deploy all sorts of energy provision, call it biomass, call it wind, call it mini grids, call it mini hydro. We need to, look, this is rainy season. I heard the Minister of Humanitarian Services say last week that even the floods, it's true, she was right. The floods can be used to generate electricity. The rivers, the swollen rivers should be used to generate electricity. The point is that we still are living in a realm where we believe that the white man must solve all our problems. So if we don't run to Siemens in Germany or run to General Electric in the United States, we believe we cannot solve our own electricity problem. It's about 72 years since we started University of Ibadan, and we cannot light a bulb in Nigeria. It's to our collective shame. And I think also, however, that being a positive person, I believe it's also an opportunity that we have to be the ones that will solve our problems ourselves. And I believe we can get it now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tokwe Fasua. You've clearly said that the regulation of the petroleum sector is inevitable and it must be done. While the area of electricity generation, we need to really redefine the space, particularly between the discos and gencos. You talked about electrification, embedded energy, off-grid solutions. I know that the Rural Electrification Agency, an agency under the government, is doing a lot in terms of the rural areas. But I like the fact that you said the universities and even teaching hospitals, which they're trying to work with to electrify, should also support their communities. And we hope that the REA will expand its scope with biomass and wind and other alternative source of energy so that we can really expand this across the nation. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tokwe Fasua, indeed, for your very, very incisive thoughts on looking at developments in the economy and this second half of the year. We hope, most importantly, that the fiscal and monetary policy makers will begin to synergize efforts because a lot has to be done to stabilize the economy in this challenging time. Thank you very much for the time, Mr. Tope Fasua, an economist.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Contributions to discuss round developments in our economic space. Thank you once again. And that'll be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. You can log on to our website, www.prochange.com, to get further developments and stories around the economy. If you get onto our website, go to the right hand of the bar and search. You'll see Nigeria Economy. Click on it to see the latest economic stories that are there. If you have any question, comments, or views around our conversation that we had today around policy, growth, and economic development in Nigeria, send those views and comments to otuabasi.abasekun@prochange.com. We'd like to receive them and respond appropriately to you. Also, you can follow the social media platforms displaying on your screen. Don't forget this period that you should stay safe. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.